Hey, welcome in. I'm Denise and I travel in my Four Winds Majestic 19G RV. If you're new here, welcome. If you enjoy the content, by all means, click that like button. If you would like to see more content, hit subscribe. If you're a subscriber, what's up? And first and foremost, I wanted to get on today. A couple of weeks ago, I was on a live with my friend Nicole, late bloomer 1111, and she had one of her subscribers come on and ask if we would individually do a video about how we found our rigs. And this is actually my second vehicle. I had a Nissan NV200 before this for 2 years. So today's video is all about that, how I selected, chose, and bought those vehicles and how I sold the first one. So let's go ahead and get into it. Alrighty, so I guess I'll start with my journey. I initially started looking at tiny homes in about 2016, 2017. I started going to like the festivals that would come to Atlanta. At the time I lived in North Georgia and up towards near Chattanooga, but I would go and, check out the ones that were going on down in Atlanta. And I was thinking about purchasing a tiny home. And one of the reasons why is I moved to Atlanta in 2017, and I had been really trying to figure out whether I was going to buy a house, whether I was going to rent, what I was going to do. And my son at the time was in high school, so I knew, it was getting close to graduation, etc. So I was really trying to figure out what I was going to do. I had actually started the process of looking at a builder and having conversations and financing and all of that good stuff. And just about then, here comes social distancing. So that kind of dropped off immediately. And I guess the algorithm said, hey, well, let's start sending her some videos about van life. And that started happening. And I was like, well, maybe I should start looking at vans and see how that would work. And the reason why is one of the reasons I was considering a tiny house in the first place was because I felt like I'm putting all of this expense into getting this long-term loan for something to be sitting in the house when I love to travel. Like, I love to travel. And at that point, I hadn't really been a lot of places, at least not at the rate that I had traveled before. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start looking at a van and see how that works out. Of course, during that time, oh my gosh, when we opened back up, I guess everybody was watching van life videos as well, or people were wanting to buy vans to start doing deliveries for like Amazon or for all kinds of stuff. I say that because I went to the Ford and the Dodge dealerships to look at ProMasters and to look at Transits. And number one, they were usually out of stock. And number two, the prices had been inflated like immensely. Let's just say it that way. Right. So it was like really crazy. When I started looking at what I wanted in a van, that's the first thing I would recommend for anybody. If you're at a point where you're like, I want to do this, figure out what are your non-negotiables. What are the things that are most important to you? And for me, one of the things that was most important was that I had a comfortable bed. I believe in a comfortable sleep. I believe in my sleep. It's a beautiful thing. And I get a regular amount of sleep, but just the quality of it. So I knew I wanted something where I'm 5'8", so I needed something that was going to allow me to be able to stretch all the way out and be comfortable. And the next thing that I looked at is the price, of course. Actually, maybe that was first. The price that I was looking to spend, because I wanted something that was going to be within my price range. And for how inflated the prices had gotten, it really, some of those ProMasters took me out of the range. Other than, and then the next thing was when I had gone to my mechanic to talk about, bringing over some vans for him to check out for me. He was like, look, I don't want to see you on the side of the road. So I'm going to need you to get something that has 80,000 miles or less. And I was like, oh, okay. And I say that because I was watching all these videos of people buying vans that had like 150,000 or 200,000 miles on it, etc. So I was like, okay, all right, got it. So the bed, the miles, the price. And then for me at the time, I wanted to be able to stand. So that was basically, I would say those were like my 4 biggest ones. I also wanted something that was stealth. I'm a city chick for the most part. And I knew that, the people who I was going to go visit, they live in big cities, LA and New York and DC and, places like that. So I wanted something that it wasn't obvious that I was going to be living inside of the van, something that was real basic on the outside, right? So that was another thing that I was considering. And those were like the biggest things that mattered to me. So I started looking when I hit that spot. So let's talk about where I was looking. So as I mentioned, I started with dealerships. I also looked at like Auto Trader, Facebook Marketplace. I also started looking at the auctions. Those were a big thing. I didn't really know how to navigate them because a lot of them were like out of state or in other places. And the idea of how was I going to get somebody to look at it, if it's out of state, and what do I look at, all of those kinds of things. But those are the places that I looked at. I ended up, I also looked at places like CarMax and Carvana and all of those kinds of places. I ended up finding my Nissan NV200 at CarMax. It only had 1,259 miles on it. Yes, that's it. It was 7 years old. It was a 2014. And yeah, it only had that many miles on it. So it was like a no-brainer for me. And I did that. So maybe I had it for 3 years because I bought it in 21 and I just sold it last year. So that would be 24. So that's 3 years. Wow. I thought it was shorter. But anyway, I ended up going, and it originally came from Virginia. And it was described to me as an older person who owned it and whose spouse had passed away, who had it. And so that's why it was, it was in great condition. It was, definitely kept in a garage, and just well kept. So that was a deal that was like amazing to me. I had started looking at, I want to say Bunny Plays Here was, a channel that I saw, and what made me look at the Nissan NV200, because when I started going to the dealerships and I saw that the Transits and the ProMasters were out of my price range at that time for the miles and all of that, I started looking at the ProMaster City and I started looking at the Transit Connects. And I found that the NV200 was larger on the interior in the back. So it was longer, especially for me being able to put a bed that would be long enough for me. So that's kind of the way that I went about that. What I did to build, I literally bought everything, almost everything off of Amazon. I bought a it was a full-size bed that was foldable, and I took half of it and gave the other half to a family member for their spare bed. And so the bed was like 75 inches long. I'm going to put a link to the things that I bought for that vehicle in the description, so you'll be able to go and see what I got. It was like 29 inches wide, I want to say. So it wasn't as big as a full, but it was bigger than most cots and some of the other things that I was seeing. So it was very cool and very comfortable. I bought a foam mattress. I want to say I got a 4-inch one, and then I bought a 3-inch one. And then I even on top of that, I had like a mattress topper on top of it. So the bed was super comfortable, more comfortable than most people who always invited me inside to sleep. And I'm thinking, no, my bed is really comfortable. I'm good. So that was that. That was how I found that one. So let's talk about how I got to the point. So I did make a concession. The thing about the Nissan that was awesome, it was white, had no windows in the back, had no writing, no nothing. So most people looked at it and just thought it was a work vehicle, and had no idea that I was sleeping in the back of it. So stealth-wise, it was awesome. So it hit all of my markers. It had less than 80,000 miles. It was in my price range. I was able to figure out a bed situation that was awesome. It was definitely, did I say stealth already? I don't remember. But anyway, the only concession I did have to make was I could not stand in it. It was, I want to say it was like 53 inches. So I basically had to put my head down like this. But I could change in there. I could do all of the things that I needed to in the back and had no problems. I had a curtain up behind the seats. So nobody even had an idea that anyone was in the back when I was back there. So it was cool. I really could not complain. And the beauty of being able to have it for those 3 years and being able to travel, like I went to California and back. I went up to New Jersey and back, West Virginia and back, Florida multiple times. So I was doing the thing and definitely did a lot of traveling in it. And that's the thing. I didn't spend a lot of time inside. So it was not a big deal that I wasn't able to stand. So that was it was not a huge issue for me. I found that, I work remotely. So I spent most of my time outside of the vehicle working. Or if I had like a little setup in there where I could sit and get air in, so it was not a big deal. That was for me. By year 3 though, I had decided there were a couple of things. One of the things that I did after, I want to say after like 2 years or so, for me, the fluctuating of like moving from place to place. So when I was on the road and would have to go like change places every night and all of that while working full time or working many hours, like that became a little bit of an issue for me. So I had to figure out, okay, what am I going to do? Where can I be long-term or at least longer than one night at a time? Because when I went to California and stuff, I did that in like 4 or 5 days most of the time. And I would stay at like Cracker Barrels or, things like that. Or sometimes I would go to campgrounds. But, that can eventually become very expensive. So what I ended up doing was I bought a campground pass that would allow me to stay for, I want to say it was like 4 nights and 5 days. I'm pretty sure it was something like that. So that was super flexible for me. It was technically a tent camping pass where I would, set my tent out as if I was going to sleep in the tent. But of course never did. We don't live that life. Nothing wrong with it if that's your thing, but no. But it allowed me to stay at a campground and for longer. And then I was able to stay at different ones and go from one to the other. So instead of me having to figure out every night where to stay, I was able to spend 4 nights one place, go to the next place, spend another 4 nights, and so on and so on. So that was super, super awesome. One of the things that was contingent though, I started looking at getting a pass that allowed me to stay even longer. And because I knew that the first van was really me checking this out and trying it out and seeing, is this going to work for me? Because one of the pieces behind this for me too is I wanted to be able to spend less on my monthly expenses so I could invest at a higher level and, do some things for some long-term plans. So, because at some point I do plan on purchasing some land and doing some business ventures. And so it was really, there was that piece for me too. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to continue doing this. This is definitely working out for me. I enjoyed, like, for instance, last year, I saw like almost 20 of my friends and relatives, and I traveled to 19 states. So clearly, like, I was loving it up. Still am. So far it's 2025. In the month of January, I had traveled to 9 states. So yeah, I am enjoying this. So anyway, long story short, I decided that I did want to look into, one, a van I could stand in, and two, something that I could stay longer in parks. And one of the things that was required is that I had something that was RVIA certified. So something that was technically an RV, or at least a van that was built out that had that certification. So I started looking and just seeing what was out there, and then looking at what I would get for my van, which was great because the miles were still super low. So I knew that, I'd at least be able to get most of what I paid for it back, and then invest that with some more into something else. So initially I said that I didn't want to sell and buy at the same time, because I didn't want the hassle of having two at the same time and trying to figure out where I would park which and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'd rethink that. That's the only thing I would rethink. But what ended up happening was I put the van up on Marketplace, and also in a bunch of the groups that I'm a member of, in Facebook groups for van lifers. And it was pretty quickly, I got offers. And so much so that I was in Florida, and somebody who was in another state asked to buy the van and was ready to meet up. And I had to hightail it back to Georgia to meet them, because it made more sense for me to do that. So I did, which was so weird. Selling on, I've done stuff where I've sold things on OfferUp and even on Facebook Marketplace. But for something that much value, it really freaked me out trying to figure out, okay, well, who's this person and is this going to be safe? And fortunately, I put in some measures, put in some steps to make sure that, yes, this was actually safe. This was a real person, met at the bank, had the money in the bank before I signed over any title, all of that good stuff. So real cool person who bought it. So it ended up really good. So I've sold the van, and I sold it on a Thursday, and I had been looking at what I was going to buy, but y'all, I did not have anything, and that was my only vehicle. So that was interesting. So long story short, I had to put a bunch of stuff in storage, just to show it in general. And it took me so I want to say I sold it on a Thursday, and I didn't find the one I was going to buy until Wednesday. It was in California. So I literally got on a plane and flew to California one way to go buy it. How I found it, I also found it on Marketplace. So similarly, I was like, oh my gosh, who is it? Fortunately, the person was a regular Facebook Marketplace seller. So they had reviews. They had a whole Facebook page that they had for a decent amount of time. I did all the things. On top of that, I also bought something called an OBD2 scanner, that you can plug into a vehicle to see, you know, like what error codes are coming up for the vehicle, to see if there was anything wrong with it. Yeah, I put a bunch of different things in place so that I could just make sure I was safe. And then I have folks in California, so so it was cool. It was a cool situation as well. So I bought it on Facebook Marketplace, but I looked all over the place. So similarly, I looked at the dealers. I just found that I knew that I was probably going to buy from another seller, as opposed to buying from a dealership or buying from, you know, a CarMax or that kind of place. And yeah, I'm trying to think what else. What else can I recommend? That's like, to sum it up, like, that's how I did it for me. I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, if you have any advice that you're looking for, feel free, put it in the comments and I will respond. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.